As the day draws to a close and the quiet of night settles in, we come before you, Lord, seeking the gentle embrace of your presence. In this sacred moment, we pause to lay down the burdens we have carried, the worries that have weighed heavy on our hearts and minds. We invite your peace to wash over us, calming every restless thought, soothing every anxious breath. This is a time set apart for healing and renewal, a sanctuary where we can find rest not only for our bodies, but also for our soul. We acknowledge that true rest cannot be found in the noise of the world or the fleeting distractions around us. It comes only through the assurance that you are near, watching over us with steadfast love and unending grace. As we prepare to close our eyes, we open our hearts to your presence, trusting that your light will shine even in the darkest hours. In this stillness, may we be reminded that we do not face the night alone. Your Spirit is our comfort, our refuge, and our strength. Tonight, we choose to surrender all tension and fear into your hands. We allow your peace to settle deeply within, so that sleep may come freely, wrapped in the certainty of your care. May this time of rest renew our hope, restore our courage, and prepare us to rise with faith renewed in the morning. In your holy name, we begin this sacred journey into peaceful sleep. As night falls and silence deepens, it is natural for the mind to revisit the echoes of the day, the moments that stirred unease, the worries that refused to rest. Fear and anxiety are real emotions that touch every heart at some point, often arriving uninvited as shadows in the quiet hours. To ignore or deny them does not bring relief. Rather, true healing begins with honest acknowledgement. Tonight, we bring before God all those fears that have unsettled our spirit and all the anxieties that have troubled our minds. Fear can take many forms. The fear of the unknown, the fear of loss, the fear of failure, or simply the fear of not being enough. Anxiety often wraps itself around our thoughts like a tight coil, restless and relentless. It can make the night seem longer, the darkness heavier, and the stillness a source of tension rather than peace. These feelings are not signs of weakness, but markers of our humanity. They remind us that we are fragile, vulnerable, and in need of grace far greater than ourselves. By naming these fears and anxieties, we do not give them power. Instead, we bring them into the light where healing can begin. We recognize that fear often masks itself in many ways. Worries about the future, doubts about our path, concerns for loved ones, or burdens of past mistakes. Anxiety may arise as racing thoughts, a pounding heart, or a restless spirit that refuses to find calm. In these moments, it is easy to feel isolated, as if we are alone in the struggle. Yet in truth, these feelings connect us to the shared human experience, a reminder that none of us walk this journey without moments of uncertainty and unease. Tonight, we bring these feelings openly to God, the source of all comfort and peace. We lay them gently at His feet, trusting that He understands every silent cry, every restless thought, and every unspoken worry. God does not condemn or reject our fears. He meets us in them with compassion and tender care. His love does not waver in the face of our anxiety. Instead, it surrounds us as a shield, offering refuge from the storms within. Acknowledging our fears before God is an act of courage and faith. It is a recognition that we cannot carry these burdens alone and that true rest requires surrender. We admit that some worries linger because we try to control outcomes beyond our reach, and some fears persist because we have yet to fully trust in God's providence. This honest admission opens the door to transformation. It allows the divine light to penetrate the darkness within, dissolving doubt and replacing it with peace that surpasses all understanding. In this sacred moment, we also recognize the spiritual dimension of fear and anxiety. These emotions often arise when we forget who we are in God's eyes, beloved children held safely in His hands. When we focus on the uncertainties of life rather than the constancy of God's presence, fear grows. Anxiety thrives when we rely on our own strength instead of resting in divine power. But when we turn our gaze back to God, we remember that He is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. As we confess our fears, we also open ourselves to God's promise to never leave us nor forsake us. We recall the words that have comforted countless souls throughout history. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. These assurances remind us that fear does not have the final word, and anxiety is not the end of the story. In God's hands, even the deepest anxieties can be transformed into sources of growth, resilience, and renewed hope. Tonight, acknowledging fear and anxiety is not a surrender to despair, but a step toward freedom. It is a heartfelt confession that invites God's healing touch into the very places where we feel most vulnerable. It is an invitation to replace worry with trust, darkness with light, and restlessness with peace. As we bring these emotions into the sacred space of prayer, we prepare our hearts to receive the healing that only God can provide. May this act of acknowledgement be the beginning of a deeper journey, a journey where fear loses its grip and peace takes root. May the gentle awareness of our struggles bring us closer to the loving presence that waits to embrace us. And may we find in this night not just the relief from anxiety, but the lasting assurance that God's peace is greater than all fear. In this honest moment of truth, as we face the fears that haunt us and the anxieties that cling tightly, may we also feel the whisper of hope that calls us forward. The hope that in God's loving care, we are never alone, never forgotten, and always held in grace. With this hope, may we rest peacefully, knowing that the night is not a time to battle alone, but a sacred time to surrender into the arms of divine love. In the stillness of the night, when the weight of our fears and anxieties presses heavily upon our hearts, there comes a sacred invitation to surrender. To surrender is not a sign of defeat, but an act of profound faith and trust. It is the deliberate choice to release the burdens that we have carried too long, the worries that have tangled our minds, and the fears that have stolen our peace. Tonight, we are called to lay all these at the feet of God, trusting in His infinite care and perfect wisdom. Surrendering worries to God means acknowledging that there are limits to our control. We live in a world filled with uncertainty. Circumstances shift beyond our influence. People make choices we cannot dictate, and outcomes unfold in ways we cannot predict. Our natural instinct is often to grasp tightly, to try to hold every thread of life together with our own strength. Yet this effort can exhaust us, deepen our anxiety, and obscure the peace that God desires to give us. To surrender is to admit that we do not have to carry these heavy loads alone. This act of surrender is deeply freeing. When we place our worries into God's hands, we are not abandoning responsibility or ignoring reality. Rather, we are recognizing the limits of our human capacity and embracing the power of divine love. We acknowledge that God's perspective is eternal and perfect, far beyond what our finite minds can comprehend. In His hands, our concerns are not lost or dismissed. They are held with tender care and transformed by His grace. Trusting God with our worries calls us into a relationship of reliance and intimacy. It means believing that God is present in every moment, aware of every detail, and actively working for our good, even when we cannot see it. This trust is not passive resignation, but an active choice to lean into God's promises, to believe that He is the source of peace amid chaos, and that His plans are higher than ours. As we surrender, we open ourselves to receive the comfort, guidance, and strength that only God can provide. This surrender is not always easy. Our fears may cling tightly, and our doubts may whisper that we must hold on. Yet the invitation remains to release control and find rest in God's sovereignty. It is a journey of faith, often requiring repeated acts of letting go, moment by moment, thought by thought. Each time we choose to surrender, we dismantle the walls of anxiety that imprison us and step more fully into the freedom that comes from trusting God completely. As we surrender our worries, we are reminded that God is a refuge and fortress, an ever-present help in times of trouble. He invites us to cast all our cares upon Him because He cares deeply for us. This divine care is not distant or detached. It is personal, compassionate, and unwavering. God's love meets us where we are, fragile, fearful, and burdened, and offers rest for our souls. In this sacred moment of surrender, we can visualize ourselves placing each worry, each anxious thought gently into God's hands. We imagine His strong and gentle grip holding them securely, carrying what we cannot carry and transforming what we fear. This visualization deepens our trust and makes the act of surrender tangible and real. Surrendering also means allowing God to shape our hearts and minds. As we release our anxieties, God works within us to cultivate patience, resilience, and peace. He teaches us to wait with hope, to find stillness in His presence, and to rest in the assurance of His love. Through surrender, we are not weakened, but strengthened, not abandoned, but upheld by a power far greater than ourselves. This process invites a deeper understanding of what it means to live by faith and not by sight. When we surrender, we acknowledge that the outcomes of our lives are held in God's hands and that His goodness transcends every circumstance, even when the path ahead is unclear or difficult. Surrendering worries allows us to walk forward with courage, knowing that God's grace is sufficient. Tonight, as we prepare for rest, let us consciously surrender every burden, every fear, every doubt, every restless thought to God. Let us trust that in His hands, our worries become part of a greater story of redemption, healing, and peace. By releasing these burdens, we create space for God's peace to flood our hearts, calm our minds, and soothe our spirits. May this surrender bring a deep and abiding rest, not only for the hours of sleep, but for the journey ahead. May we awaken renewed, freed from the weight of anxiety, and strengthened by the assurance that God is carrying us through every trial. In surrender, we find true freedom, the freedom to rest in God's perfect love and peace. As darkness envelops the world and we prepare to surrender ourselves to the rest that night brings, it is a sacred moment to declare the protection of God over every part of our being. In these quiet hours, when vulnerability can feel heightened and fears may rise, affirming God's guarding presence becomes a powerful act of faith and assurance. To speak aloud or to hold silently in our hearts a declaration of divine protection invites a peace that surpasses understanding and a safety that no earthly force can diminish. God's protection is not distant or passive. It is active, personal, and deeply intimate. It stretches over us like a shield, guarding our bodies from harm, our minds from restless worry, and our spirits from despair. This protection is rooted in God's eternal love, a love that watches over us ceaselessly, that neither slumbers nor sleeps. The psalmist's words remind us, "He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep." This divine vigilance is the foundation upon which we can rest securely. Declaring protection means inviting God's presence to stand as a sentinel at every threshold of our lives, the doorways of our homes, the chambers of our hearts, and the pathways of our minds. It is an acknowledgement that, even in the unseen realms of the night, we are held safely. As we speak these truths, we proclaim that no fear, no shadow, no force of darkness can penetrate the barrier of God's care. This declaration disarms the power of fear and anxiety by affirming a higher power that is infinitely greater. Our bodies, temples of the Holy Spirit, are included in this divine protection. As we sleep, God's hand rests upon us, guarding us against illness, injury, and harm. Our minds, often a battlefield of racing thoughts and worries, find calm under God's watchful eye. The anxieties that seek to disturb our rest are silenced by the presence of a peace that cannot be manufactured by human effort. Our spirits, vulnerable to despair and discouragement, are uplifted and renewed by the promise of God's sustaining grace. In declaring protection through the night, we also embrace the power of prayer as a spiritual armor. Prayer is not only communication, but a declaration of trust, a spiritual proclamation that God's protection is real and present. It activates faith within us, shifts our focus from fear to confidence, and anchors us in the truth of God's promises. This spoken or silent affirmation becomes a fortress of peace around us. This act of declaration also connects us to a long lineage of believers who have found comfort in God's protection throughout the centuries. The ancient prayers and psalms that have echoed through time are filled with affirmations of divine safeguarding. We join in this timeless chorus, affirming that God's care transcends generations and situations. In this connection, we find solidarity and strength. Declaring protection invites a renewed awareness of God's sovereignty over all creation. It reminds us that no circumstance is outside God's reach, no night too dark, no trial too great. We affirm that God holds the universe in His hands, and we are not forgotten within that vastness. This truth becomes a balm to the restless heart, a steady anchor in the storms of life. As we make this declaration, we also invite God's angels to encamp around us, forming a divine guard that watches and protects. Scripture tells us that God commands His angels concerning us to guard us in all our ways. This spiritual reality reassures us that we are never alone, never unprotected, even in the deepest hours of darkness. Declaring protection is not merely a defensive posture, but also a declaration of peace and confidence. It transforms the night from a time of fear to a sanctuary of rest. When we affirm God's guarding presence, we step into a space where anxiety loses its grip and tranquility takes root. This peace allows us to relax fully, to let go of tension, and to embrace the restorative power of sleep. In this declaration, we also invite the healing presence of God to permeate every cell of our being. Protection is not only about safety, but about restoration. It is about waking renewed, whole, and ready to face the day ahead. The night becomes a sacred time for God's healing to work deeply within us. Tonight, as we prepare for sleep, let us boldly proclaim God's protection over our lives. Let us speak words of faith that build a shield around us, guarding body, mind, and spirit. May this declaration be a source of comfort and strength, a reminder that we rest not in our own strength, but in the powerful, loving arms of God. With this assurance, may our hearts be still, our minds at peace, and our souls secure as we enter into the gift of peaceful rest. In the quiet stillness of the night as we prepare to rest, there is a sacred invitation to embrace the peace that only God can provide. A peace that transcends human understanding and surpasses all worldly comfort. This peace is not merely the absence of conflict or worry, but a profound inner calm rooted deeply in the presence of the divine. To embrace God's peace is to open our hearts fully to the love, assurance, and security that flow from the Creator's endless grace. God's peace is a shelter for the soul, a refuge where fear and anxiety cannot penetrate. It is the peace promised to those who trust in Him, the peace that Jesus spoke of when He said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." Unlike the fleeting calm that the world offers, which depends on circumstances and fades quickly, God's peace is constant and unshakable. It remains steady even in the midst of life's storms, anchored in the unchanging character of God. To embrace this peace, we must first make room within ourselves. The mind, often crowded with restless thoughts and burdensome worries, must be quieted. The heart, sometimes heavy with fears and doubts, must be opened. This requires a conscious act of surrender, a deliberate decision to release control and receive the serenity God freely offers. It is in this letting go that we make space for peace to enter and settle deeply. God's peace envelops us like a gentle yet powerful presence. It touches every part of our being, calming the turmoil within and restoring balance. It soothes the racing mind, stills the anxious heart, and revives the weary spirit. This peace is a balm for the soul, healing the wounds inflicted by fear and doubt. It whispers reassurance when silence feels overwhelming and offers rest when the burdens of the day seem too heavy to bear. Embracing God's peace also means trusting in His perfect timing and sovereign care. When anxiety tempts us to worry about what is yet unseen or unknown, God's peace reminds us to rest in the truth that He holds all things in His hands. It invites us to trust that even when life feels uncertain, God's plans are good, His love unfailing, and His presence near. This trust transforms fear into confidence and replaces turmoil with tranquility. This peace is not passive, but active. It empowers us to face each challenge with calm assurance, to navigate the night's shadows without dread, and to awaken with renewed hope. It is the peace that sustains us through difficulties and nurtures resilience in the face of trials. As we embrace God's peace, we are equipped to meet the day ahead with courage and grace. The embrace of God's peace also brings a deep sense of connection to God, to ourselves, and to the world around us. It reminds us that we are never alone, that we belong to a greater story woven by a loving Creator. This awareness nurtures gratitude, joy, and a quiet strength that radiates from within. Peace becomes not just an inner experience, but a testimony to the healing power of God's love. In moments when fear threatens to return, we can recall the embrace of God's peace. We can breathe deeply, remember His promises, and center ourselves once again in His presence. This peace becomes a refuge to which we return time and again, a sanctuary of calm in the ebb and flow of life. Tonight, as we lie down to sleep, let us open our hearts wide to embrace this divine peace. Let us invite it to wash over us completely, to fill every corner of our being, and to carry us gently into rest. May the peace of God guard our minds and hearts, quieting every fear and soothing every anxiety. In embracing God's peace, we find freedom, a freedom from the chains of worry and the grip of fear. We discover a tranquility that refreshes our souls and renews our strength. This peace is a precious gift, a divine presence that transforms our nights into sacred times of healing and restoration. May this night be marked by the embrace of God's peace, so deep and sure that it holds us through every hour of rest. And may we awaken with hearts refreshed, spirits renewed, and minds clear, carrying the gift of peace into each new day. As night deepens and we surrender ourselves to sleep, there lies before us a sacred opportunity, an opportunity to affirm rest and renewal in our lives. Sleep is far more than a physical necessity. It is a profound gift from God, a divine provision for healing the body, refreshing the mind, and rejuvenating the spirit. In this moment, we consciously declare that our rest will be restorative, that renewal will take place, and that we will awaken strengthened and prepared for the journey ahead. Rest is essential to the wholeness of our being. It allows our tired muscles to relax, our hearts to slow, and our minds to release the burdens of the day. Yet true rest is more than mere cessation of activity. It is a state of deep peace and restoration. When we affirm rest, we invite God's presence to work in the hidden places of our bodies and souls, repairing what is broken, soothing what is weary, and replenishing what is drained. This affirmation is a declaration of faith, that even in our vulnerability, God's power is at work to renew and restore. Renewal is the promise that follows rest. It It is the fresh breath that fills our lungs, the clarity that clears our minds, and the strength that steadies our steps. Renewal touches every aspect of our being. It refreshes our emotions, rekindles our hope, and restores our capacity to love and serve. To affirm renewal is to believe in transformation, not only in the physical sense, but also in the spiritual and emotional realms. It is the assurance that God's grace is continually making all things new, even as we sleep. This night, as we prepare to rest, we declare that our sleep will be deep and undisturbed. We reject the distractions of worry and fear, and we welcome peaceful slumber that penetrates to the core of our being. We affirm that our bodies will heal, our minds will quiet, and our spirits will find refreshing renewal. This is not a passive hope, but an active faith in God's sustaining power. The process of rest and renewal is a divine cycle, one that mirrors the rhythms of creation itself. Just as day turns to night and the earth rests before the dawn, so too do we enter a sacred rhythm designed for restoration. When we affirm this cycle, we align ourselves with God's natural order, trusting that each night of rest is preparing us for the light and life of a new day. Affirming rest also invites us to release any guilt or anxiety about the need to pause. In a culture that often prizes busyness and productivity, we may feel pressured to keep moving, to solve every problem before we rest. Yet, through this affirmation, we embrace the truth that rest is not a weakness, but a strength. It is an act of obedience to God's design and an acknowledgement that our bodies and souls require restoration to function fully. As we affirm renewal, we also open ourselves to the transformative work God desires to do within us. This may be renewal of hope where despair has taken root, renewal of courage where fear has lingered, or renewal of faith where doubt has crept in. Renewal is an invitation to wake not as the same person who lay down, but as someone refreshed by grace, ready to face life's challenges with new strength and perspective. In the quiet of the night, as the world rests, we join in this sacred affirmation. We declare that our sleep is not wasted time, but a holy interval, where God's healing and renewal are active. We trust that every breath we take in sleep is a step toward wholeness, every moment of rest a thread woven into the fabric of our well-being. Tonight, we claim the promise that when we wake, we will do so with renewed energy, clearer minds, and lighter hearts. We affirm that our spirits will be buoyed by hope and that our bodies will be strengthened for the tasks ahead. This declaration roots us firmly in the reality that rest and renewal are gifts freely given and faithfully fulfilled by our Creator. May this night be marked by the fullness of rest and the abundance of renewal. May we awaken, refreshed, invigorated, and ready to live each day as a testament to God's sustaining love and healing power. In this affirmation, we find peace, strength, and the assurance that every night's rest is a sacred passage into new life. In the quiet moments before sleep, there often arises a restless tension within us, a subtle but persistent desire to hold tightly to the reins of our lives, to control every outcome and to dictate the unfolding of events. This urge to control stems from a deep-seated fear of uncertainty, a natural human impulse to seek security in the familiar and the predictable. Yet, this very need can become a source of anxiety and unrest, keeping our minds active when they most need to find peace. Tonight, we are invited to release this need for control and to place our trust fully in the divine timing of God. Releasing control is not an easy act. It requires humility to admit that we are not the ultimate authors of our stories, and courage to relinquish the illusion that our efforts alone can shape the future. We recognize that life's complexities extend far beyond our reach. Circumstances shift unexpectedly, relationships change, and plans often veer off the path we envision. By clinging to control, we resist the natural flow of life and burden ourselves with unnecessary stress. To release control is to open our hands and hearts, acknowledging that there is a greater wisdom at work, one that sees beyond our limited perspective. Trusting divine timing means embracing the profound truth that God's plan unfolds perfectly and precisely, even when it defies our understanding. God's timing is not hurried or delayed, but unfolds with flawless purpose. It is a rhythm that balances grace and growth, healing and challenge, preparation and fulfillment. When we trust this timing, we move from impatience to patience, from frustration to peace, and from fear to faith. We allow ourselves to rest in the assurance that every season has its purpose and that God is working all things together for our good. This trust calls us into a posture of surrender, not passive resignation, but active confidence. It invites us to let go of the constant striving to fix every detail and to rest in the knowledge that God's wisdom far exceeds our own. This surrender is a sacred act of faith, a declaration that we believe God is both loving and capable, intimately involved in our lives and sovereign over the unfolding future. Releasing control and trusting divine timing also opens our hearts to the lessons embedded in waiting. Waiting is often seen as a test of patience or a period of frustration, but it is much more. It is a time of preparation, transformation, and deepening faith. In these moments, God refines our character, teaches us perseverance, and draws us closer to His heart. Trusting divine timing means recognizing that the delays and detours we face are not obstacles, but opportunities for growth and deeper dependence on God. When anxiety tempts us to grasp tighter, we can remind ourselves that control is an illusion and that true peace comes from surrendering to God's perfect plan. We can visualize handing over the worries and what-ifs that consume our minds, placing them gently into God's hands, trusting Him to carry and guide them. This visualization helps us release the grip of fear and opens the door for peace to enter. Trusting divine timing also requires us to let go of expectations about how and when things should happen. We may have dreams and hopes that feel urgent, and it is natural to desire their fulfillment. Yet trusting means allowing God to shape those hopes according to His wisdom. Sometimes, what we long for must be reshaped, delayed, or replaced with something even better. In this trust, we find freedom from disappointment and openness to the abundant life God offers. This surrender to God's timing also nurtures gratitude for the present moment. Instead of living in anxiety about the future or regret about the past, we learn to embrace the now, the time and place where God is working in our lives. This awareness brings a deep peace as we rest in the assurance that God is faithfully guiding each step, even when the path is unclear. As we release control and trust divine timing, we are invited into a deeper intimacy with God. This trust transforms our relationship with Him from one of demand to one of reliance and love. We become partners in a divine dance, moving in harmony with God's rhythm rather than resisting it. This harmony is a source of profound peace and strength. Tonight, as we prepare for sleep, let us consciously choose to release every desire to control our circumstances and futures. Let us place our worries, plans, and timelines into the hands of a God who loves us perfectly and works all things for our good. May this act of surrender open our hearts to peace and patience, allowing us to rest fully, free from the burden of control. In trusting divine timing, we discover that we are held securely, not by our own efforts, but by the unfailing love and wisdom of God. This trust is the foundation for restful sleep and renewed hope. May we awaken refreshed, confident that God's timing is perfect and that His plan for our lives unfolds with grace and purpose. In the stillness of the night, as the world quiets and we prepare to surrender into rest, there is profound power in pausing to cultivate gratitude for God's abiding presence. Gratitude is more than a feeling. It is a sacred posture of the heart, an acknowledgement of the countless ways God's love and faithfulness surround us, even in moments when we may not fully perceive it. As we close our eyes and quiet our minds, expressing thanks for God's constant presence grounds us in truth and anchors our souls in peace. God's presence is a promise that transcends circumstance. It is not contingent on our feelings or the state of our lives, but is a steadfast reality. The psalmist declares, "The Lord is near to all who call on Him," a reminder that God is never distant or detached. This nearness is a source of comfort and strength, especially in the dark hours when fears and uncertainties threaten to overwhelm us. To give thanks for this presence is to affirm that we are never alone, that God's loving gaze is upon us, and that His arms are always ready to hold us close. Gratitude for God's presence invites us into a deeper awareness of the divine at work in the ordinary and extraordinary moments of our lives. It helps us see that every breath, every heartbeat, every quiet moment is sustained by God's grace. This awareness shifts our perspective from what is lacking or fearful to what is abundant and secure. We begin to recognize the unseen ways God protects, provides, and guides us, even when life feels uncertain or challenging. Expressing gratitude also opens our hearts to the transformative power of thankfulness itself. Gratitude softens anxiety and fear, replacing them with trust and hope. It turns our focus from worry to worship, from scarcity to abundance. Scientific studies confirm what spiritual wisdom has long taught, that gratitude changes the brain, promoting calmness, joy, and resilience. Spiritually, gratitude is an act of faith, acknowledging that God's goodness is present even when our circumstances do not reflect it. This night, as we prepare to rest, we choose to cultivate a heart of thankfulness for God's unwavering presence. We give thanks for the many ways God has shown faithfulness throughout our days, through answered prayers, unexpected blessings, moments of peace, and the gift of life itself. Even in trials, we find reasons to be grateful, knowing that God is working all things for our good, and that His love never fails. Gratitude for God's presence also nurtures a sense of humility and wonder. It reminds us that our lives are part of a vast, divine story authored by a loving Creator. We are not isolated beings, but cherished children enveloped in God's care. This realization brings a profound peace as we rest in the knowledge that we are held securely, not by our own efforts, but by the enduring faithfulness of God. Moreover, gratitude invites us into a deeper intimacy with God. When we thank God for His presence, we open the door to a fuller experience of His love. Our hearts become more attuned to His voice, more receptive to His guidance, and more aware of His nearness. This intimacy transforms our nights into sacred times of communion and rest, where God's presence becomes a soothing balm for our weary souls. As we reflect on God's presence, we also acknowledge the mystery and majesty of a God who is both transcendent and immanent, sovereign over all creation, yet intimately involved in the details of our lives. This duality is a source of awe and comfort, reminding us that the God who holds the universe together also holds each of us with tender care. Gratitude for God's presence is a powerful shield against the attacks of fear and loneliness. It reminds us that no darkness is too deep, no night too long for God's light to penetrate. This truth allows us to face the unknown with confidence, knowing that the one who watches over us never slumbers nor sleeps. Tonight, as we prepare to enter rest, let us fill our hearts with thankfulness for the constant presence of God. Let us remember that His love surrounds us, His grace sustains us, and His peace guards us. May this gratitude calm our minds, ease our anxieties, and prepare our souls for peaceful sleep. In embracing gratitude, we find ourselves held in a sacred embrace, an embrace that carries us through the night and into the promise of a new day. May this night be marked by a deep awareness of God's nearness, a heart overflowing with thanks, and a spirit renewed by the assurance that we are never alone. As the night deepens and we rest in the quiet embrace of sleep, there lies within us a sacred commitment, a promise to awaken with renewed faith and hope. This commitment is more than a simple resolution. It is a spiritual declaration that acknowledges the transformative power of God's presence, both in our rest and in the new day ahead. To make this commitment is to plant a seed of faith that will grow and flourish as we rise, shaping how we face the challenges and opportunities that await us. Faith is the foundation of our journey through life. It is the confident assurance in things unseen, the trust in God's promises even when circumstances appear uncertain. To commit to wake with faith is to declare that no matter the trials that may come, we will meet them with courage rooted in God's unwavering love. It is a decision to anchor our hearts not in fleeting emotions or shifting situations, but in the eternal truth of God's faithfulness. This commitment is a powerful antidote to fear and doubt. In moments when anxiety tries to steal our peace, faith stands as a beacon, illuminating the path forward. It invites us to release worry and to embrace trust. Trust that God is working all things for our good, that His grace is sufficient, and that His plans for us are filled with hope. When we rise with this faith, we are equipped to face the day not with apprehension, but with confidence. Making this commitment before sleep also transforms the way we view rest. Sleep becomes not only a time of physical restoration, but a sacred interval where God prepares our hearts and minds for the journey ahead. It is in this time of stillness that faith is nurtured, strengthened, and renewed. As we surrender to rest, we simultaneously plant the intention to awaken with a spirit fortified by trust and hope. Waking with faith also calls us into active participation in God's work in our lives. It is a readiness to engage with the day's challenges, to seek God's guidance in every decision, and to act with love and grace toward ourselves and others. This commitment is not passive waiting, but a dynamic engagement with life, empowered by the assurance that we do not walk alone. God's presence accompanies us, strengthening our steps and lighting our way. This promise to awaken with faith nurtures resilience. Life inevitably brings seasons of difficulty, loss, and uncertainty, but faith sustains us through these times. It reminds us that setbacks are temporary, that God's mercy is endless, and that restoration is possible. When we hold fast to faith, we find the strength to rise after every fall, to hope when all seems lost, and to love even when it is hard. Committing to wake with faith also deepens our relationship with God. It is an expression of trust that invites intimacy, drawing us closer to the heart of the divine. As we begin each day with faith, we align ourselves with God's purposes and open ourselves to His transforming work. This daily renewal of commitment becomes a rhythm of grace, shaping our character and guiding our journey. This commitment is also a call to gratitude. Faith awakens our awareness of God's blessings, even in the smallest moments. It helps us see the hand of God in the sunrise, the kindness of a stranger, or the quiet moments of joy. This gratitude fuels our hope and grounds our faith, creating a cycle of blessing that enriches our lives. Before we close our eyes tonight, let us make this sacred commitment to rise with faith. Let us declare that no matter what the new day holds, we will face it with hearts anchored in God's promises and minds open to His guidance. May this promise bring peace to our sleep and strength to our waking. In this commitment, we find a powerful source of hope and renewal. We affirm that each morning is a new beginning, a fresh opportunity to live by faith and to walk in God's light. As we rest now, we prepare to awaken not only in body but in spirit, ready to embrace the day with courage, trust, and love. As the night unfolds and we prepare to enter into deep rest, it is fitting to close this sacred moment with a blessing, a solemn invocation of God's peace, protection, and healing throughout the hours of sleep. This blessing is a heartfelt declaration that God's presence will surround and sustain us, transforming our rest into a time of true renewal and restoration. We ask that God's peace, which surpasses all understanding, guard our hearts and minds. May it quiet every anxious thought and soothe every restless spirit. Let this peace descend like a gentle mantle, wrapping us securely in the comfort of divine love. As we lie down to sleep, may worries dissolve and fears be replaced with the calm assurance that God is near, holding us in His everlasting arms. We call upon God's protection to be a fortress around us. Let no harm come near. Let every shadow be dispelled by the light of His presence. May angels encamp around our homes and our hearts, standing guard over our bodies and souls. In this divine safeguarding, may we rest free from disturbance, secure in the knowledge that we are watched over with unwavering care. We also invoke God's healing power to work quietly and powerfully within us. May this time of rest renew our strength, restore our health, and refresh our spirits. Let every breath we take be a step toward wholeness, every moment of sleep a sacred passage into deeper well-being. May the morning find us renewed in body, mind, and soul, ready to embrace the day with vitality and grace. This blessing is an expression of trust in God's faithfulness and love, a trust that carries us through the night and into the promise of a new day. As we close our eyes, we entrust ourselves fully to God's care, confident that His presence will fill the darkness with light, the silence with peace, and the stillness with healing. May this blessing rest upon us now and always, a sacred assurance that we are never alone, never unprotected, and forever held in the loving embrace of our Creator.